Hello everyone, I want to start off by saying thank you to all of you for all the encouragement you've given me, which is some great motivation to put in the effort to actually do the tedious task of job hunting, but also great motivation to keep bringing you content. Speaking of content, let's get started, shall we?
And then I wanted to cover the issue of do atheists just lack a belief in God? Let me just say a few words about this because I don't think it's a very good way to describe atheism. Because if atheism is merely a lack of belief in God, then atheism is just a claim about the atheist state of mind. It's not a claim about God's existence.
I wouldn't say state of mind, but I know what you meant there. So, exactly. This is what an atheist means when they say they lack a belief in God. We have heard your claims, the claims made by science, and because scientists can back their claims with loads upon loads of evidence and you lack a single shred of it, we believe what science has to offer in explanation of the natural world.
It's basically saying, the atheist is saying, he's saying, I'm psychologically, or I'm not psychologically convinced that God exists. Well, so what? That offers no evidence for or against God. You see, most people lack a belief in unguided evolution, yet no atheist would say that that shows that evolution is false.
When we say we lack a belief in God, this isn't us offering any evidence. This is a result of evidence, not evidence itself. When people like you say you don't believe in evolution and choose to believe in creation, this is in spite of evidence that supports evolution and lack of evidence to support creation.
So this is it's not a good definition of atheist to say I just lack a belief in God. Another reason that atheism is not just a lack of belief in God is because if you say that's what atheism is, or that's what an atheist is, then rocks, trees, and outhouses are all atheists too, because they lack a belief in God. Look, it doesn't take any brains to lack a belief in something.
And here I thought you might actually be one of the ones that doesn't need to do what you obviously are about to do. First, it does take brains to lack a belief in something. By lacking a belief, you have made a cognitive decision, choice, or simply are incapable of believing a specific thing. Rocks and trees are incapable of belief and disbelief, period. They lack the biological tool needed to do this. But please, continue constructing your straw man atheist with the use of a no true Scotsman fallacy.
A true atheist is someone who believes there is no God.
Damn, I'm good.
But probably the most important point to make here on this claim that atheists just lack a belief in God is that the atheist is really trying to avoid the burden of proof.
That's because we do not have the burden of proof. We are not making a positive claim. Even if we said we believe there is no God, this still does not shift the burden of proof from you to us. You make the positive claim, there is a God, so you still have the burden of proof, whether you can handle it or not, or whether you want it or not. The fact that apologists keep trying to shift the burden of proof onto us is not only stupid in light of how we come to our lack of belief, but demonstrates your own knowledge and how weak your stance is. You seem to know you have nothing to stand on, so instead of trying to find and or present evidence, you say you don't have to. Every religion does this that makes the claim of a God's existence, either crying it's self-evident or a sin to do so, or they do what you are doing, trying to shift in light of a weak stance known to those taking that stance.
To say that just a theist has to explain or give evidence for his worldview. The atheist doesn't have to give any evidence for his worldview.
First, if I've said it once, I've said it in damn near every video I've made. Atheism is not a worldview. It never has been, never will be. Second, we do not give two shits about your worldview. You need to stay on topic. You are talking about the existence of a God, a very specific God, and you must prove that this God exists if you make the assertion that he does. It's that simple. We hear the claim. We do not believe the claim. The person making the claim provides evidence of the claim that shows it to be true. We believe the claim. That's how it works, and until you are capable of doing that, all this fallacious reasoning you knowingly employ only causes me to be even more skeptical and downright suspicious of not only your claims, but of your personal integrity.
But that's just not so. Why? Because atheists are always trying to give alternatives to the theistic worldview. They try and say, well, maybe the quantum vacuum brought the universe into existence. Of course, that doesn't explain where the quantum vacuum came from. They try and say that evolution has somehow gotten rid of the need for a designer to life. They try and say that there are other explanations for things that normally we would say God is required to explain.
No one, at least no one I've been able to find, is saying the quantum vacuum is responsible for the existence of the universe. And if I am understanding it correctly, a quantum vacuum is an area of space with the least amount of energy possible. This means it would be the exact opposite of what is needed to create an entire universe full of energy. But this is a scientific theory on empty space that underlies particle physics, and personal theological opinions are irrelevant whether you believe in God or not. I know that the most widely accepted theory on the beginnings of the universe is the Big Bang theory, the result of an unimaginable level of energy compressed into an infinitesimal point, expanding into the beginnings of the universe with all the elements needed for stars, planets, and other objects to form in space, because it is backed by evidence and able to do all the things that is required of it to be a theory. It is also scientists showing us that evolution is a fact, and the evolutionary sciences, along with many others, use the theory of evolution in their fields of study and work to gain new knowledge. As far as other explanations for things that you just chalk up to God and call it a day, well, yeah, it is laziness and willful ignorance at work that just refuses to actually study the world and instead just attributes the unknown to a God. In the past, before the scientific era, this was excusable, but now in our modern world, it is not only inexcusable but detrimental to our future to think in this fashion. This type of archaic thinking only serves to hold humanity back from all we can potentially accomplish because it requires the dismissal of gained factual knowledge to survive. It requires remaining ignorant on purpose.
So they're trying to come up with positive beliefs that atheistic materialism is the best way to explain reality. In other words, atheists don't lack a belief in materialism. They're not skeptical of materialism. They think that materialism is true.
One does not have to be a proponent of materialism to be an atheist, and in fact one can be a materialist and believe in creation, just not a supernatural creator. Materialism is a philosophical opinion that everything that ever did, does, or ever will exist is strictly made up of matter of some type or another. That is the extent of my knowledge on what materialism is, but it does make a heck of a lot more sense and a lot more useful in the goal of gaining knowledge. If we work on the belief that everything can be learned about and nothing is outside our ability to gain knowledge on, we tend to have people among us that will strive to learn about everything. If we do as you do and assume that there are just some things we'll never understand, this has the opposite effect, as you most clearly represent in your willful misunderstanding of the natural world in favor of a God-did-it explanation.
As Philip Johnson once said, he said, "He who is a skeptic in one set of beliefs is a true believer in another set of belief."
You mean the architect Philip Johnson? What Philip Johnson are you talking about? Whoever you're talking about was talking out of their ass at that point. I don't need to have a firm set of beliefs to be skeptical of your beliefs. I just need to have the power of reasoning above that of a child. A childish mind is needed to believe without pause, reason, or skepticism. You know who said that? I did, just now. You know why? Because it's true. Children believe in fairy tales, fictions, and have imaginary friends. Once we reach adulthood, our mental development should reach a point where we do not simply believe something because someone told us. We should require more, such as evidence and personal experience. We should not accept someone else's stories of personal experience as evidence, nor should we use our own ignorance as the tool to explain anything.
Lacking a belief in God doesn't automatically establish materialism, any more than lacking a belief in atheism automatically establishes Christianity.
You don't lack a belief in atheism. You cannot lack a belief in lack of belief. That doesn't even make sense. You can believe in theism, but that is not a lack of belief in lack of belief. But again, you're operating on the myth that creation has started, that atheism is a worldview.
No atheist would say that a Christian has made a good case because he lacks a belief in materialism. You see, everyone has the burden of proof to support his or her position.
False. Everyone who makes a positive claim has the burden of proof. If I maintain the position that you have failed to provide adequate proof of your claim that there is a God, this does not require me to prove that you haven't provided adequate proof.
What atheists need to do is they need to make a positive case that only material things exist. They have to make a positive case from a materialistic perspective that everything has been caused by materials and consists only of materials. An atheist that we experience today, the new atheists, they're materialists. They have to explain from a materialistic viewpoint how the universe came into existence, why it's fine-tuned, where the laws of nature came from, and what are the laws of nature, the laws of logic, the laws of mathematics, information. Where did life come from? Mind and consciousness. How do you explain that from a materialistic perspective?
Scientists are working on finding some of those answers, but to assume that a bunch of Bronze Age con artists got it all right and had all the right answers with their claims of a god because we currently lack explanations is, as I've already said, just lazy, willful ignorance. You cannot provide an ancient explanation without a single bit of proof and tell those who are skeptical of your explanations that we need to prove you are wrong by providing the explanations for everything ever. Every time science provides the evidence, you shift the fucking goalpost ever back. But I don't call it shifting the goalpost. I call it retreating ever deeper into your own ignorance and mythological belief system. And again, atheists do not need to prove that you haven't provided proof. If you operate on what we say we are and believe or don't believe, and stop constructing straw men, we might actually get somewhere.
How do you explain free will from a materialistic perspective? What do you say, it's an illusion, like Daniel Dennett? That's what he says. He's a new atheist. He says consciousness is an illusion. Well, if it's an illusion, was he conscious when he wrote the book that said consciousness was an illusion? He'd have to be super conscious to know that the consciousness we have is just an illusion. Objective morality, where does that come from? How about evil?
The whole free will and consciousness argument I avoid like the plague because it is philosophy, and I am interested in supported truth. Objective morality doesn't exist. What you call evil is simply something you subjectively believe is evil. The fact that we all disagree on what is and is not moral strongly supports a lack of objective morality, and I have a video or two wherein I explain the lack of existence in objective morality, so I won't get into detail here. Suffice it to say that belief in objective moral truths is purely subjective to the person who believes in them.
Now, it's very rare to find any atheist attempting to explain more than just one or two of the things I just mentioned. How could they? How could laws be materials?
I guess you don't spend much time actually listening to an atheist or a scientist, do you? You most assuredly do not spend time on YouTube, where plenty of atheists have addressed everything you mentioned, and I'm pretty sure I have addressed most of it. As far as your laws question is concerned, this depends on what type of law you are talking about. Laws of nature are a result of material and physical reality. Laws of human creation are the result of 100% material functions of the human brain.
They can't be. See, the point is that when an atheist says that he just lacks a belief in God, he doesn't really just lack a belief in God. He is saying positive things about the world. He's saying everything's made of materials. Well, give me evidence that everything's made of materials. And how could you?
I'm going to go ahead and let you respond to that statement with something you said earlier in this same video.
Lacking a belief in God doesn't automatically establish materialism.
Isn't that interesting how you can't even maintain consistency within your own argument? Perhaps this is a result of your creation of a straw man to contend with instead of actually responding to what we say. It'd make your job so much easier. If we lack a belief in God, all you have to do is show us God exists with evidence outside of the claim. It's so simple it might work. Wait, you don't have any evidence. You know you don't. And you know you never will. Which is why you refuse to do so and instead go the route of a snap-together apologetics model.
You can't give evidence that everything's made of materials because any evidence you bring forth isn't material itself. Any thought you have isn't material itself. And if it is just material itself, why should we believe it? If every thought you have is the result of a previous natural cause over which you have no control, then why should anyone believe anything you say as an atheist?
What the fuck? Evidence that everything is material isn't material itself? Did you really just say that? If everything is material, then the evidence for that would have to be material too. You should believe something because you can see, touch, hear, smell, taste, or otherwise perceive it in a natural state. You should believe it because you can experience it as a reality. That last question was the most nonsensical of the three, and that is saying a lot. We believe what people have to say because there are reasons outside of them saying it to believe it. If I say something and you have no reason to believe what I say, it is up to me to give you that reason in the form of evidence. For example, if I tell you that there is a God, it is up to me to overcome your skepticism by providing evidence. If I am incapable of this, then you have no reason to believe me. The source of our thoughts themselves are fucking irrelevant, unless of course you believe the source of your thoughts to be divine. And if that's the case, you might just be an arrogant shit, or a schizophrenic.
You see, atheism ultimately is self-defeating. Materialistic atheism. It's self-defeating. There's no way to know atheism is true if it really is true. Because if atheism is really true, then we're not really reasoning anyway. We're just reacting. We're not really thinking. Every thought we have is just the result of a previous natural cause over which we have no control.
Every thought we have is the result of the neurons in our brain firing in response to the stimulation we provide through the use of our five senses. There is not significant or useful reason enough to believe or even ponder on what took place 1,000 years ago that led me to have a single thought at any given time. It's a waste of fucking time that only a pretentious prick or someone who has gotten their hands on some really potent marijuana would engage in.
So atheism is not really a lack of belief in God. Atheism is the positive assertion that God doesn't exist. And if God doesn't exist, explain how reality exists in his absence. How can everything be material? You have to make a positive case for that. You just can't say I lack a belief in God. You're just talking about your own psychological state. Well, so what? I lack a belief in atheism. Does that mean that Christianity is true? No, not necessarily. You have to give evidence.
Not too long ago, I made a video in regards to double standards, the likes of which you just demonstrated. You require evidence of the materialist claims, not the atheist, but do not require evidence for your own beliefs.
Finish him!
This was just more of the same fallacious reasoning in defense of an ever-increasingly obvious lack of existence in any kind of supernatural explanation to the existence and or origins of the natural universe and world we hear from every apologist. In response to our simple request that you prove what you say, you tell us we need to prove what only some of us believe. This is a red herring. Simply put, if you want people, atheists, to believe in God, you have to provide evidence for that God's existence. Until you do this, all your deflections only serve to strengthen the skepticism toward your claims and the opinions that you're little more than a con artist selling an invisible product that people can easily acquire with the use of their imaginations completely free of charge. Materialists do not have to provide evidence that you are wrong, only that they are right. Scientists provide evidence of their claims to be scrutinized by others, and do so willingly and knowing full well that their claims can be and might be completely falsified. Your problem is that you have an emotional investment in your belief in God. You think that you are saved from torment, promised paradise after death, and most tellingly, are an immortal soul within a physical body. Every religious claim points to an overwhelming fear of human mortality, purposeless existence, or a lack of reward for good deeds or punishment for bad deeds. Atheists accept the real world for what it is and how we perceive it. The claims of supernatural origin are unfounded, unreasonable, and without purpose or practical application to our lives. So we lack a belief or disbelieve your claim. And this does not shift any burden of proof onto us. We do not have to prove you wrong, you have to prove you're right. Innocent until proven guilty can be metaphorically applied to God claims with a little editing. Not true until proven true.